Suicide bombers attacked the UN in Algeria. Tonight, Al-Qaeda says its North African wing was responsible. Devastation and death. 67 people are feared killed. Much of the building collapsed after the massive blast. Tonight, the faces of bin Laden's bombers are published on the internet.
It's got the signs of a long campaign in Algeria and possibly spreading to Morocco and Tunisia as well.
It is the worst attack on the UN since bombers blew up the mission in Iraq. It appears to be a well-planned attempt to shut down the organization's work in another Muslim country. Also on the program, a question of identity. Reports say back from the dead canoeist John Darwin took his fake name from a dead baby. Another data disaster as the details of thousands of drivers in Northern Ireland are lost by the government. And an evolution revolution, a new theory about just how fast humans are developing. Good evening. Al-Qaeda went to war again with the world's peacemakers today. United Nations offices in Algeria were targeted by suicide bombers. Nearly 70 people were killed. One of the bombs exploded between two UN buildings. The other, outside the country's Supreme Court, blew up a bus full of students. The United Nations said at least 5 of their people were killed, 14 others are missing. Tonight, Al-Qaeda said 2 of its members carried out the bombings. Tim Hewitt has our report.
The UN flag still flies in Algiers, but the building behind it has been destroyed. And before darkness fell in this troubled city, rescue teams were picking their way through the rubble to search for anyone still trapped inside. What happened in this narrow street was the work of a suicide bomber. There are UN offices on both sides of the street, and they were clearly the target. The first time the United Nations has been singled out for a major terrorist attack since Baghdad in 2003.
I'd like to condemn in the strongest terms. This is just unacceptable in whatever circumstances. It cannot be justified in any circumstances.
There was more bloodshed and more lives lost across Algiers in the affluent district of Ben Aknoun. The target here, the country's Supreme Court, another building destroyed. Many of those injured and killed were students in a school bus, which was simply torn apart by the blast. This has been the worst day of violence in Algeria since the civil war in the 90s. Al-Qaeda has claimed responsibility. Tonight they released these pictures of the 2 suicide bombers they say did it, named as Abdul Rahman al-Asmi and Ami Ibrahim Abu Othman.
It's got the signs of a long campaign in Algeria and possibly spreading to Morocco and Tunisia as well.
Neil Doyle is a writer and journalist expert at tracking terrorists through their websites. These are images posted by a recently formed Al-Qaeda group in North Africa. There were messages talking of a war with the Algerian government.
Attacks this year, they've been on the rise ever since the group announced their allegiance to bin Laden. And we've seen a number of attacks in recent weeks. Often these attacks target foreign oil workers,